Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and we've got a wonderful show for you all today. Lots of fun basketball to talk about, and at the end of the show, we are going to run through our bi-weekly NFL power rankings, but we're starting with the NBA, Logan, and we're starting with what was maybe the game of the regular season so far that we saw yesterday. I would say in terms of stakes, you have the 15-0 Cavs taking on the reigning champion Boston Celtics, but also the game itself was amazing. It was wildly entertaining. This is a Boston win, Logan, but for Cleveland, who it feels like this game was more about just because we know who Boston is, what did this say to you about their real contending chances?
You buried the lead, Carson, in the lauded in-season tournament for the Emirates Cup.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're so right.
You undersold the stakes, man. That's the final component of this.
No, I did.
It's for the lauded Emirates Cup, man. It's so important.
Well, it's just group play. You know, let's not overreact.
True. We haven't gotten to the final 8 teams yet. I do think this game was more about Cleveland and what their playoff prospects look like, right? Because the Celtics are the favorite in the Eastern Conference. They won the East last season. They are the measuring stick for any contender in the Eastern Conference looking to come out. And I think the Cavs can go toe-to-toe with the Celtics, Carson. Now, I think they need a couple of things to break their way. At full health, I am still taking Boston. I think they need Kristaps Porzingis to be hurt, right? And I think they need probably, I guess not apples to apples, and I also think they need Tatum and Brown to underperform, but I think they've got the firepower. And to me, it starts with Donovan Mitchell. I think Mitchell's a top 15 guy in the league, man. What he did in the fourth quarter and what he can do in just spurts it's really rare. He's got 18 fourth quarter points. He is the only guy that just possession after possession is attacking and getting them buckets. But it's also got a lot to do with Evan Mobley too, man. I mean, Mobley, I know the Cavs got out to a really slow start in this game. So did Boston. Evan Mobley was wrecking the game defensively from the jump. And then in the third quarter, he gives you 14 points in the third, man, attacking with post hooks. He knocks down a big three during that stretch. And that's with mostly the bench unit. I think the Cavs need to lean more into Mobley offensively. And I know he had a lot of responsibility in the game last night, but I think they need to even lean more heavily into letting him operate. And I was even more surprised this was such a close game because Darius Garland had such a stinker. I mean, he gives you 8 points on 3 of 21 shooting. And in the first half, I thought it got a little bit overblown because I really liked the looks that Garland was getting to out of floater range. He was just missing. But the second half, it just compounded. He couldn't buy a shot. But like top to bottom, I think they've got a really great offensive engine in Mitchell that can just go toe-to-toe with anybody head-to-head in a potential playoff series. They have a rock-solid defensive anchor who I think Evan Mobley probably is my defensive player of the year up to this point. Can anchor that side of the basketball. I trust Darius Garland to play better than he did last night. I mean, that is like the bottom barrel, man, because I saw people, kind of walking back their takes from last season where Garland's washed. I think Garland just had a bad night. I expect more out of Darius Garland from this. I think Allen has taken marginal steps improving offensively. And then I really like Cleveland's depth, man. Jerome is a bona fide baller. I love what he gives you off the bench. Craig Porter Jr. is really solid off the bench, giving you ball handling. They're without Okoro in this game. They're without Dean Wade. They're without Max Strus. They're without Karis LeVert. It's like this is not the Cavs team at full health. If I had to point out one thing that I think that I'd like Cleveland to acquire before we get into the playoffs, it's another defensive wing who can guard bigs or another defensive big that can switch out onto wings. And the only reason I say that is just because I don't think there's anybody on their bench that can really do that. Like Niang, I like offensively what he can do, but he's a weak point defensively. I'd like, and I know, again, they're without Okoro and they're without Strus, but I'd like a 6'8", a 6'9" guy that can really...
You don't think that that's Dean Wade? And then when you stagger the minutes with Mobley and Allen, I mean, they can do exactly what you're describing.
I guess just a guy who's a little bit more impactful defensively. Dean Wade's not a bad...
They stay sleeping on Dean Wade. Not a bad. He is a good defender. He is an actively good defender. I do, bro. He's got the frame. He moves his feet really well. Very switchable.
Maybe it was just because he wasn't out there, and maybe he can address that. But I really like Cleveland, man. Like, they're definitively number 2 to me in the East. I don't know Again, it would take something I think catastrophic to Boston for me to pick them over them, but Cleveland's not far off. And I think with the improvement that we've seen from Mobley, with the trust that I have in Donovan Mitchell, the belief that I have in him, I would pick it to go 6. Again, I would still take Boston right now at this point in the season, but they're not going to go down without a fight. And I don't think Cleveland has like a glaring exploitable weakness the way they have in the past few seasons. They're just better. And it starts with Mitchell and Mobley, man. I think they're stamped as the number 2 team out east, and I think they could throw a really good punch at Boston in the playoffs.
This game, to me, just continues to legitimize that Cleveland is the second best team in the East, even in a loss, because they didn't shoot well, while Boston shot incredibly well, and that's what Boston does, but they were over 50% from deep in this game. They were down several key wings. You mentioned all of the guys, 4 of them not able to play in this game. And that was especially crucial defensively because that's where Dean Wade and Okoro especially, and Strus, who hasn't played all season, they can bring their value guarding the Tatums and the Browns of the world and being able to switch. And Darius Garland was absolutely atrocious. He played maybe the worst game that I've seen from anybody this entire season, and still the Cavs were within 3 points in this game, and they were highly competitive. I think that you shouted out some of the key components in what makes them so lethal. Evan Mobley, we've talked about his leap many times over, but I think he's playing like a top 30 player in basketball right now. I thought he was outstanding in this game. Their big run in the third quarter started on the defensive end, and Boston was missing some threes and a little bit out of rhythm offensively. But then on the offensive end, it was Mobley cashing in. It was Mobley attacking mismatches. It was Mobley facilitating, creating for teammates. He just dominated this game in numerous different phases. Super efficient as a scorer, aggressive there, dominated the glass, 6 offensive rebounds, 6 assists, and altered so many shots around the rim. Just unbelievably impactful defensively. And then you have Donovan Mitchell, who I agree, I think is probably about the 15th best player in basketball right now. And in a series against Boston has the potential to be the best offensive player in that series. He just has that sort of explosive ceiling where he's my favorite driver to watch in basketball, dude. I mean, like the body control, the footwork in the lane, it's unbelievable.
That, and there's only like a handful of guys I would take over Donovan Mitchell. I don't even know if I'd say handful. You give me a screen and I need a bucket, Donovan Mitchell is one of the first guys that I want in basketball.
When you have that sort of ability to attack the rim downhill and you have that sort of pull-up shooting ceiling, the dude is just an absolute problem. And we've seen these just meteoric heights that he can reach. There is a little volatility there compared to some of the league's elite scorers, but my God, he can just take over games, and that's what he did in the fourth quarter. And I'm with you, dude. I think the bench here is so good because even without all these dudes who we're mentioning, Ty Jerome has just been amazing all year. Sam Merrill actually starts in this game, but is just such a good shooter of the basketball, right? Craig Porter Jr. can bring a little juice off the bounce. Niang is going to shoot really well and is going to at least compete defensively. And now we're talking about them going like 11 dudes deep. And I do think with their best wing defenders healthy, with Okoro and Wade and Strus out there, Cleveland has as good a formula to defend Boston as anyone in the conference. Like, yes, they do have a couple of vulnerabilities with Garland, who's been defending better this year, but is still a small guard, with Mitchell, who has shown the ability to be a solid cog in the machine defensively, but is still a smaller guard. Boston is just different, right? They are experts in exploiting weaknesses. So the standard for what qualifies as a weakness to them, it doesn't mean you have to be a bad defender. Just if you aren't an actively good one, then they can probably find a way to hunt you. But they have this really nice array of wing defenders, and they have these 2 bigs who are both elite rim protectors and can also guard in space. And Mobley really guards Jayson Tatum well. He really guards Jaylen Brown well in isolation on the perimeter. And they have offensive weapons. The thing is just, Boston has more, man. And Boston is just still significantly more talented, in my opinion. So I love Cleveland. I do think they're the second best team in the East. But my takeaway from this game, as much as I'm impressed with their ability to hang in there in a game where Garland was awful and they were shorthanded, is just that Boston is still that much better than everybody else in the East. And that I think they're going to be even better than last year. We can talk about these absences for the Cavs, and they do matter. Logan, the Celtics didn't have Kristaps Porzingis. Like, I'm sorry. That is inarguably more significant to me than the totality of all of the absences for Cleveland. KP is a top 25 player in basketball. I still think people underestimate what an absolute weapon he is when he's on the floor. And I think the fact that Boston is so good without him can make us forget that. But you get him out there healthy, and that just takes them up another level. Having that level of a mismatch attacker, having that level of rim protection. And the really scary thing about Boston right now, man, Jayson Tatum's playing his best basketball ever, and it's honestly not all that close. He's giving you 38 and 6 on 63% true shooting, and this is what we talked about throughout the offseason. This is why I had Jayson Tatum as high as I did in my player rankings. Last year, in many ways, was the best Jayson Tatum that we've seen when you're talking about rebounding, when you're talking about defense, when you're talking about playmaking, absolutely. But it was the worst that we've seen him in a postseason as a scorer, and it was really brutal as a jump shooter. That was never going to remain the case, though. And right now, he is just on fire as a jump shooter. He's 48% off the catch from deep this year, 39.5% overall from deep on 11 attempts per game. And at the same time, as his jump shot is more of a weapon than ever, he's getting to the line more than ever. And it's the best he's ever been as a playmaker. It's the most comfortable and confident and in control I feel like he's ever looked like. He is playing as a top 5 player. No doubt about it right now. If we were to list off the best NBA players this season so far, it's Jokic, obviously, 1. Then it's Giannis, AD, Tatum. And I think you can kind of organize those guys 2 through 4 how you want, but I don't think there's anybody else that's been as good as those 4 guys. That's terrifying for the league because we can appreciate all of the awesome stuff that Tatum did to impact winning while his shot was off, while his scoring was off. But also we can acknowledge that he didn't play at a level that was really all that close to a top 5 player last year because of his scoring limitations. And now he's showing that absolutely he can get there, and that just makes Boston even better. And Derek White has been more aggressive this year, and he was awesome in this game. He's hitting runners. He's getting to the mid-range. They have a better version of Peyton Pritchard. Horford was outstanding in this game. His rim protection was so impressive. His floor spacing was so valuable. And they're going to get Kristaps Porzingis back. I'm sorry, I love the Cavs. I just don't see them keeping up with this talent level, this level of creation from everybody on the floor, this level of athleticism top to bottom, this shooting, this skill. Boston is a juggernaut, and they look scarier to me now, considering KP's out, than they basically ever have.
Yeah, I mean, Boston with this version of Jayson Tatum is effectively unstoppable.
They win the title. There's just no way around it.
And, like, Cleveland's way better than last year, specifically from offensive rating. You know, they leaped from a league average offense to number 1. Mm-hmm. They've jumped from 24th in pace to 7th in pace. And I think we've seen really simple actions open up the entirety of their offense, right? Handoffs, pick and rolls. Literally, just for a second, like, conceptualizing like a pick and roll with Mobley, because the defense has to respect Mobley as a vertical threat. It never allows the help defender, the big man who's switching on, to take away that intermediate shot, right? So at will, when you're spamming actions like that, Garland or Mitchell are going to work to a wide open floater or mid-range jumper basically every single time, or they're going to get to the rim, right, off of a switch. And if they do stay attached or if they slide, right, and you kick it to Mobley on the short roll, Mobley's developed enough as a passer to where he's killing you with that short roll decision making, and he's better with his touch shot making than ever, where he can legitimately take guys one-on-one in the post. Like, normally he's way better with a mismatch, right, where he's shooting over the top of an Al Horford or he's attacking Peyton Pritchard off of a switch. But, again, just because you have to respect these actions, it makes this entire offense more deadly. And I think that the weapon for me for Cleveland is going to be letting Boston shoot themselves out of stretches, which is way easier said than done, because I thought that was a key component of how they got back in this game in the third quarter. Sped up Boston's offense, a lot of early shot clock threes, long rebounds, Cleveland getting out on the break and scoring. Again, that's easier said than done, but I think Cleveland needs to make a deliberate effort of continuing to get downhill, because that's when I thought their offense was at their best. And I have to give Boston credit in that too. Boston did such a great job of taking away the three ball. And that's such a weapon, man. When you can take away threes from the other team and just hit 20 in a single game, it creates such a large margin that's just hard to overcome. And that's why I do look at Boston as a juggernaut. Because as I give all this praise to Cleveland for making this a close game, Tatum was nails. Boston's defense was awesome. And the ball movement is unreal because that's the thing that I don't understand about when people criticize Boston for taking too many threes, because I was on that ship for so long last year until they won the title. Up until the playoffs, I said this could be their Achilles heel. Them getting too gung-ho with the threes.
Mm-hmm.
But when the ball movement is this impeccable, it's so unselfish. They're just manufacturing wide open looks, it seems, every possession down. That's what blew me away, man, is just Boston operates at such a high level every single night. And it actually hasn't been every single night this year. We've seen Boston kind of take their foot off the gas, but Boston came out with an intent in this matchup, Carson. Like, they seemed like, I haven't seen Boston play with that kind of intensity this year. Boston came out and wanted to make a statement against this undefeated team, and they did. They do still look leaps and bounds ahead of the competition. And again, man, if we're going to get this version of Jayson Tatum, I think Boston runs away with the East. The only hole I could say is being without Kristaps Porzingis, and I don't think Kata can give you real playoff minutes. I think Kata's a weak spot. I like Kata, and I know people have been hyping him up, right, as a rebounder, and he's a really good offensive rebounder. I don't want to take it.
I feel like your people here. I feel like you bring up Neemias Queta more than anybody else I know, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I brought up Queta before he got playing time, and now that he's been getting playing time, he's not smart offensively. He falls asleep defensively sometimes. He's a liability.
He's not going to be in their playoff rotation, though.
That's what I'm saying. That's why. That's another. He's just a weak spot. Like in the third quarter, they were going at Queta. That end of the third quarter into the fourth, Cleveland was attacking Queta every single possession. He can't give you playoff minutes. And you say I'm MFs. I haven't brought up Queta all year, bro. Like once when we're talking about Boston, bro.
I feel like you brought him up last show, unless I'm tripping.
He's a good rebounder, and I think he's a good spot in certain matchups. Cleveland's a specific place where I worry about him because they were going at him possession after possession, and he couldn't stop anybody. So, but I mean, that's Boston's one flaw. It's like their ninth guy, right? I don't want him getting playoff minutes. And that's what I'm saying is like they are the team to beat. They are still 100%. The team to beat, and it's boring, and that's just the simple fact. And if they get Kristaps Porzingis back, and that's what's crazy. Porzingis at this point in his career is a hired gun. When you got a hired gun as your last guy, that's deadly, man. He is basically a hitman at this point. He is an assassin. He is, hey, man, we're going to put you in the playoffs. You're going to give us 20 minutes a night. You're going to do your thing, and that's going to put us over the top. It's going to take something catastrophic for me to put Cleveland over Boston. They're still the juggernaut right now.
I agree, and this is just why I struggle to see how certain people are putting Cleveland above Boston. If you're going to identify one area where they're better, I would say it's their depth. But what is that going to matter in a playoff series when the Celtics starting five is Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, and Kristaps Porzingis, and off the bench, they have Horford, who is a phenomenal bench player. They have Peyton Pritchard, who is a phenomenal bench player, and they have Sam Hauser, who's really solid. They don't have to go deeper than that. So, yeah, it's awesome that Cleveland has 10, 11 guys who they can play, but when Boston has the best 8 in the conference by far, I don't view that as a meaningful factor. I do want to touch on this Garland game just a little bit, though, because Garland has been awesome this year. I mean, per 36 minutes, he's giving you 24.5 points, 8.3 assists a night, better than 62% true shooting. It's the best he's ever been. And I talk about Mobley playing at like that top 30 kind of level. Garland has been this year a top 40 player, right? I mean, both of these guys have been on the outskirts of the All-Star conversation. I think some people would say that Garland is their second best player. Personally, I just think when you have a guy who is as transformative defensively as Mobley, a top 5 defensive player on the planet, and they are a legitimately good, impactful, highly versatile offensive player like Mobley is right now, I just think we can underrate defensive players. Like, he is special on that end and a really good offensive player. I'll prefer that impact to Garland's.
Do you think he's the best on the planet right now?
The best defender on the planet? I don't know if I could say that. It's hard because, like, AD is the dude who I feel has the most ability, but what we're seeing from him in transition is just, like, lazy, and that is a legitimate component in defense. I think Gobert is always in the conversation. I think that Draymond has to be in the conversation right now. I mean, those would be my top 4 right now. Wemby right there as well. I said in this offseason, I think that you could argue it. But I don't know. I think if it came down to a single playoff game or series, I would probably take AD. But I think that Mobley is the better regular season defender just because the effort, the motor is more consistent.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it in the offseason too when we were ranking our best defensive players. His versatility is unreal. Like the fact that Mobley has such long arms, it's like he can just play that drop so much better because he's still getting a really good contest on basically anybody giving them that jump shot. And on the second best player thing, dude, I think we're still just scratching the surface of what Mobley is going to be able to do offensively. Like, I don't think Mobley is nearly as confident as he's going to be. Like, I don't know if you remember this one possession in the third quarter. He's got the mismatch on Horford, and he, like, kind of drives in a circle on Horford on the low block and then gets into the hook. And it's like, dude, once Mobley, like, no hesitation, is just rising and firing with that shot, confident in it, I think we're just tapping into it, man. He's one of the most valuable assets in all of basketball to me with his youth, how much better I think he can get offensively, and then how already great he is defensively. I mean, it's not Garland. It's not Garland's bounce back that is the biggest reason for why I consider Cleveland to be. It's Mobley. It's all Mobley. Like,
well, they both matter because Garland just was
he has
not the second option they needed him to be.
He has to pull his weight 100%, but he's special, man. He really is special, and it's just so much more consistent now. But I'm telling you, man, I think that he's going to get even better. I think next 2 to 3 years, he could climb into, I don't know, that top 10 range, that top 20 to top 10 range, man. I think it's very, very possible.
I'm with you, dude. I mean, I am all the way in on the Mobley stock that I bought on him as a prospect when I said that he was the best prospect that we'd seen in several years. Like, I was so high on what he could be, and it's because of that elite defensive foundation and all of the offensive tools that he had. And I think that we have to give a lot of props to Kenny Atkinson for empowering him, for making him more confident, for using him more in transition as a pick and roll ball handler, just with the ball in his hands more. The consistency is so big, dude. I mean, Mobley doesn't have an offensive no-show this entire season. Last year, there were multiple games where it's like, okay, Mobley is just in single digits. He gets you to at least like 14, 15 every single night efficiently, and he's involved even more than the box score because he is facilitating offense. He's getting a lot of touches. I'm with you, dude. I mean, I think he can be a top 15 player in this league. Absolutely. But with Garland right now, he's been awesome this year. This game doesn't change that. I'm much more confident in him than I was last year. This is a bad matchup for him, though, and he was brutal in this series against Boston last year. This is just a crazy long, athletic defense, and I think that Garland can be overwhelmed by that. He is tremendously skilled, but these big athletes can give him trouble, and I think you see that in this game, right? He was forcing the issue, and he was struggling to create separation. He's jacking up really tough pull-up threes. He's an amazing pull-up shooter, but some of these early shot clock, they feel forced. He's forcing layups and tough runners against bigger defenders. Particularly, I feel like Al Horford kind of just owns him, man. Like, that was a matchup to watch last year where Garland tried to cook Horford off of some switches, and he got him a couple times, but Al got him just as much. I mean, he moves with him on those drives, and Garland really struggles to finish over Horford around the rim. So that is a little bit of a concern to me. I think Garland certainly would play much better than he did today in a series against Boston because this was by far the worst game that he's played all year. But I also think it's probably the toughest matchup for him in the conference.
I agree, and it is concerning in a hypothetical matchup against Boston in the playoffs. And the bigger issue to me, too, is just what it does to the rest of the offense. When Garland's struggling, I feel like Donovan Mitchell has this tendency to just ice everybody out because it's like, I have to carry the entire weight of the offense. And specifically at the end of that first half when Garland was going cold, Donovan Mitchell literally, I mean, you could see it. It was like, all right, I'm just not going to pass the ball. I'm taking every shot. And then it just, you know, it compounds, right? It starts as a small snowball with Garland missing good looks, and then it snows into a big snowball where Mitchell's taking tough contested shots early in the shot clock, and it's just spiraling your entire offense, and you're slowly out of the game. I mean, it really ruined their first half. I really hope Garland doesn't play as bad as
Well, he
as
couldn't
he did in this
possibly.
one.
He couldn't
I mean,
possibly.
but again, I don't think this is Darius Garland. I
No.
think the Darius Garland that I just expect more from him on a night-to-night
100%.
basis. And I agree with you. I thought later in the game he was taking some bad shots, but in the first half, I really liked the looks he was getting to, and he was just missing intermediate shots, and that's going to happen sometimes. That's where you can be critical, right? Garland is a tough shot maker, right? He's not going to manufacture any super easy looks, and there's just inherent volatility and tough shot making in guys who get buckets like that. So if that's your criticism, I get that, but I think just Darius Garland is just better as a baseline than this, man. Way better.
Absolutely. And I think unless you thought that Cleveland was better than Boston, unless you were irrationally high on the Cavs, this is encouraging to me. And it feels to me like when we were talking about who's going to be the biggest challenger to Boston this year, the Cavs have been what we thought the Knicks would be, just in terms of having 4 top 60 players, right? That was the selling point for the Knicks. But now it's like, okay, the Cavs have a top 15 player. They have a top 30-ish player. They have a top 40-something player. They have another guy who probably ranks somewhere in the 50s in Jared Allen. Like, their top-end talent has actually been better than the Knicks when you just consider that Mikal Bridges has been a letdown. And then it's a more complementary roster when Mobley's taken this leap offensively. And obviously they don't have nearly as big of a red flag because of the defense that they have with this interior duo, and their depth is way better, and their coach is awesome, and everything is just trending upwards with them. I thought that this was a really, really fun game to watch, and I really do like the Cavs a lot. You know who I don't like right now, Logan? The Philadelphia 76ers, who are currently sitting at 2-11, and the big story of the day yesterday was Shams' report that the Sixers had a team meeting in which Tyrese Maxey specifically called out Joel Embiid for being late to everything and setting a bad example for the entire team. Obviously, everything is in disarray for Philly right now. What was your reaction to that, Logan? Hearing that report, what does that say to you about Embiid, and what does that say about where the Sixers are at?
Sorry, last thing on Boston and Cleveland. When you lose a game by 3 points, when you get outshot by 36 points behind the line, like, again, I think that's as encouraging as a loss can get. But I'm really disappointed, Carson. I'm really disappointed. Just in Embiid in general. It's a really bad start for the Sixers. They're 2-11. They've lost 4 straight. They're dead last in offensive rating. They're below league average in defensive rating. And Maxey, PG, and Embiid have yet to share the floor. It's just a really bad look for Joel Embiid, man, especially as a leader. I know you did a video on this on TikTok, too. I agreed with all the points you made, but Embiid seems apathetic. He seems indifferent. He seems aloof. And especially when you're the guy on this team, especially this year when there's so much roster turnover, I just feel like it's more important than ever for you as the star of the team to show up and to be committed and to set the standard as the guy. But also what's strange to me, Carson, is just that Embiid has this air of entitlement about himself when he hasn't accomplished anything. And I don't mean that, wholeheartedly, right? I don't mean he hasn't accomplished anything. Obviously, he's won MVP. Right? Obviously, he's put up all these gaudy numbers. The guy's never been to the Eastern Conference Finals, and we're talking about the great winners of this game. And it's different from quarterbacks, right? Because people could go, well, Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl, right? Well, if we're doing the chips thing, what I'm saying is that in basketball it's different because you can play both sides of the court. You are on the court. You can just have more of an individual impact in basketball than you can in football. There's 22 guys on the field. There's 10 in basketball, and you play both sides of the court, right? Up and down. And traditionally, when I look at basketball players, when you're that good, I expect you to be able to single-handedly carry your team through in a different way. And I love the passion from Tyrese Maxey. God bless him, man, for calling him out. Maxey wants to win. And that's what I take away from this. Tyrese Maxey is fed up with losing and underachieving, and he wants to win desperately. I don't get that, insatiability from Embiid. I don't get that urge, that urgency. The clock is ticking. You're 30 years old. You're super injury prone. You've crapped your pants every time you've been to the playoffs. Last year was your best run ever, and you still got bounced in the first round. Like, and this year's been abysmal. Embiid is 15.6 rebounds, 3 assists on 32% from the field, 49% true shooting. I think he's like 15% from deep. Carson, they're playing like a 3-win team with Embiid on the floor. They have an offensive rating of 87.6 with Embiid on the court. Like, at this point, I'm over Joel Embiid completely. Like, I just don't think this guy's ever going to figure it out, Carson. He's injury prone. I don't think he cares all that much. I'm at a point where I'm saying trade Joel Embiid. Shop him. Figure out what assets you can get back. I just think this is a lost freaking cause. I don't know. Like,
what is his value, though? I think you'd have a harder time trading Embiid because of the availability, above all else, because of the age.
But I just don't think this is ever a guy that's going to be able to lead you to an NBA champion. It's not about the talent. It's about his work ethic and how much he gives a fuck about winning. I don't think Joel Embiid cares about winning. And what's sad is it's like you get fat and you get sassy and you got paid. Right? Ben Simmons got that bag from Philadelphia and said, oh, well, you know, I've got my house and I've got my earnings and I don't know, my back kind of hurts. I'm just going to check out. I'm just going to clock out. That's how I feel with Joel Embiid, man. I think he got paid and I don't think he cares anymore. And I think he could I think he couldn't care less about if the Sixers are winning games or not. I just don't see how it gets better, Carson. I don't know. Like, I think it's going to take an internal change from Embiid, like admitting that he's got to do more. And I just think Joel Embiid has shown us who he is at this point. And it's really telling when the young guy is doing this, right? If the roles were reversed, I think I'd understand it a little more. If it was 30-year-old Embiid going, hey, man, we got to screw your head on, Maxey. We got to get right. This is just weird. The young guy is going to the star of the team and saying, hey, man, I need more from you. I'm just done. I'm done with Embiid. I'm done with the Sixers, man.
I feel like I'm done with Embiid right now, too, dude. And I am done with giving him the benefit of the doubt, and I am done with giving him excuses. It's one thing if you can't be available. Obviously, that is a big problem for your franchise, but that is not personally your fault. It's one thing if you are repeatedly underachieving in the playoffs, right? Both of these are big red flags, big red issues for your superstar. But the thing that I just absolutely cannot forgive is this sort of leadership where you are just acting as though you are above being on time when your team is spiraling, when you have a bunch of roster turnover, when you have a key injury to Tyrese Maxey right now, when you individually have been horrible. You do not have the presence of mind as a 30-year-old who has been the face of this franchise for 9 years to go out there and right the ship and set an example. The job of a superstar, Logan, is not just about your ability, right? Embiid has all the ability in the world. It is about being a stabilizing factor. It is about doing what a Nikola Jokic has done this year, right? Which is not just, okay, averaging 30, 14, and 12 and being far and away the best basketball player on the planet. It's also about, after you score 40 against the Clippers, saying that loss was on me. No, it wasn't. But that is the responsibility of a superstar. That is a responsibility of the best player to take excessive accountability, to be over the top in terms of how positive an example you set for everybody around you. And Embiid is completely failing at that. He is failing miserably on the court right now, but that's not going to remain the case. Like, we know who Joel Embiid is as a basketball player in the regular season. But in all of the other areas that make for a superstar, right? Make for a franchise building block. Well, Joel Embiid has played 43 games per year since he came into the league. Joel Embiid is one of the most historic playoff droppers that we have ever seen. And he is the only superstar, Logan, who he has a performance and we're like, well, that's the best that he's played in the playoffs. It wasn't as good as he is always in the regular season, but hey, it was better than like the historic disasters. And I'm done with that, dude. And look, he was hurt last year. I thought that he played a good series, but the fact that we treat him with such kid gloves which we would never do with Jokic, which we would never do with Giannis, which we would never do with Luka. When those guys are repeatedly lapping him in all of these key categories, Embiid doesn't belong in conversations with those guys. I am so extremely disappointed in him. I said in the TikTok you mentioned that there hasn't been a player in my lifetime with a bigger gap between their ability and how much I want them to be the building block of my franchise. And look, I don't think that there's any reason, unfortunately, to expect that the availability, the health is ever going to get better with Joel Embiid. And maybe there's the one postseason where he's healthy and it comes together, right? And I sort of have been saying that for the last year. 2 years ago, we ranked our top 10 players going into the playoffs that we would want. I had Joel Embiid at number 8. And a lot of people got upset about that, but the reason was that he historically hadn't been healthy and he had been bad in the playoffs. And then I felt like some people were being a little too hard on him. And I was like, guys, the potential is still in there somewhere. You don't get that benefit of the doubt. You don't get that credit from me when you are failing as a leader, when you are failing to show that you care enough about this basketball team that desperately needs you to be a superhero on and off the court. Right now, that is the job of a superstar. And this is like the inflection point in Joel Embiid's career to me. Forget the Sixers season. This is the moment where we see, can he figure this out? Just emotionally, at the very least. Does he understand what this team needs of him? I don't know, man. If he doesn't figure it out now, then he's never going to figure it out. And this stuff is bigger than just what we see on the court, man. This is about the culture that you set. And I think that Embiid has been a disgrace in that regard this year. And I think that repeatedly we've seen this sense of entitlement that you mentioned from him. A couple weeks ago, he's talking about, I've given too much to this city for people to question if I want to be out there. Well, dude, you're showing a lack of care. I mean, you're late to everything apparently, right? So why is it unfair to question that? I'm just so disappointed. And, it's tough for me to see the light at the end of the tunnel with the Sixers right now. Like, yeah, I think that they're going to go on a stretch where they rattle off some wins. They're still going to make the playoffs because the Eastern Conference is a disaster. But do I have any faith in them reaching the ceiling that they have? No. And do I think it's possible that this season just turns into a complete disaster because Joel Embiid isn't the emotional anchor that they need him to be? Maybe. We'll see. But either way, I'm certainly much lower on the Sixers than I was before this year, and I'm just done. I'm done with Joel Embiid.
The two biggest things to me is, one, the lack of accountability, because I think Embiid's answer could have changed the perspective and the way that we scope this, right? About being late. If he had just said, I've been late, I haven't been putting in 100%, that's on me. I'm going to do better from now on, right? But instead, he gets butthurt and lashes out, right? And also, it's the work ethic. You're not going to win the title by just doing enough. You have crazy guys playing this game. I think Jayson Tatum has an insatiable appetite to win. Mm-hmm. He may not perform at apex Jayson Tatum level every night, but he's going to give me apex level Jayson Tatum effort every night. I don't have to question that with Tatum, and that's why I like him representing my team. Luka Doncic may not perform that, but I think he has an insatiable desire to win. Again, his effort night to night, he's got to work on that too, but yeah, I know the guy wants to win. You're not going to win a championship if you don't have that in you, and I don't think Embiid has it. I don't think he has that hunger, that desire to crush all the competition to go win a championship. I think he is really content with where he is. I think he's comfortable. Carson, I think he's really comfortable with just where he is, and he thinks that he has done enough. And I don't know. I just don't think Embiid's hungry, and that's a problem to me, man. I just don't think he has that crazy desire to win.
It's sad, dude, but he is just objectively failing to live up to that superstar standard. We can talk about, right, when he's at his best, when he's on the floor, he's a top 5 player. Okay, but how many dudes would you rather bank your franchise on compared to Joel Embiid? I mean, you mentioned Jayson Tatum. To me, that's not even close. SGA, that's not even close. Anthony Davis, I would rather be invested in. And I understand you can
Mm-hmm.
talk about, oh, well, Embiid as a floor raiser is better, right? Because of the offensive volume that he can eat up. Listen, AD is more available. AD is also just playing at an incredibly high level individually right now. We've seen that from him before. There's just better leaders, and there are dudes who are out there on the floor. And for Joel Embiid, with all of his shortcomings, right, with all the ways in which he has failed to live up to his ability in the biggest moments, not understanding that, not having the ultimate chip on his shoulder, thinking instead, no, fuck you guys, it's all your problem, right? It reminds me of the MVP race a couple years ago, where he went on that whole rant about like, oh, the criteria changes every year and it's always rigged against me, and he's taking all these shots at Jokic, and it's like, dude, where does this come from? Like, you're not focused on the right things. And I'm not saying that Joel Embiid doesn't want to win, okay? I wouldn't take it that far. I'm saying I don't think he understands what is required of him. And it's a high standard. That is the standard you are held to when you are the MVP of a league. That is the standard you are held to when people talk about you as a top 5 player, and he's not meeting it.
Maybe that is a better way to put it. Maybe that is a better way to. He doesn't understand how to do it. The final point I wanted to make on this was just, we talk about this all the time, how teams, take the identity of their leader and they make it their personality, right? Jokic and how the Nuggets play so unselfishly, right? Everybody is just committed to making the right play, playing the game the right way, giving full effort. We talked about this last year with Tyrese Halliburton, how the Indiana Pacers, everybody, the ball continues moving. You're passing up good shots for great shots. Everybody's playing so unselfishly. You take on the personality, the identity of your leader as a team, and the Sixers don't have one. Their identity is, again, man, this isn't even like on the court issues that I have with Embiid, where he can stagnate your offense and he can not give full effort. It's deeper than that, man. It's just a lack of care. He's just careless. I like I said, man, I don't know, Carson. I think there may be, I don't know how far I'd take it. Like, are there 15 guys? Are there 20 guys that you take over Embiid? It's just like, I just don't think Embiid can be the number one on your championship team. I don't know if he's equipped to get it done, man. It's not the ability. It's never been the ability. It's never been the talent. It's everything else with Embiid, and that's what makes it so frustrating.
Yeah, the probability of everything coming together for him just gets lower and lower in my eyes as he gets older and just continues to fail in the same areas. I will say the other really concerning thing for the Sixers, because Joel Embiid is not the reason. His underperformance on the court is not the reason that the Sixers are 2-11. I mean, he's been horrible, but he's only played 3 games. Paul George has just been so bad this year, and I was really high on that addition, but like, everything just looks bad for Philly. And I do think that things are obviously going to get better, and they get the big 3 out there, and it's like, okay, they can throw a nice punch, man, but you want to talk about them doing anything serious? There's just too much that I don't trust here.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
a lot of that is about Embiid.
best case scenario is what, a second round exit?
Feels like it, right? And you would have looked at the roster before the year and said, okay, well, there's the upside for a conference finals run with this big 3 that they have. And if Embiid can play to the level of these tier 1 guys, but like, I'm just done, man. I'm done living in a theoretical world where that stuff could happen when it just hasn't happened. And Embiid is showing a lack of understanding of what is required of him as a leader, what it takes in terms of championship DNA. Logan, there's a couple other dudes who Embiid has actually always been in conversations with, and I've always strongly felt that both of these dudes were significantly better than Joel Embiid, especially Nikola Jokic, and I think that that is just going down as one of the all-time worst debates that we had to sustain for multiple years, and good to be on the right side of history with that one, Logan. But as Joel Embiid is failing to right the ship up to this point in the season, both Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo have been doing everything that they can. And I feel like I've seen this start to pop up as a discussion point because Jokic has missed the last 3 games with personal reasons, and the Nuggets have looked bad. They got a win against Memphis without John Morant. They also lost to Memphis without John Morant, and they lost to the Pelicans with nobody on the floor, a Pelicans group that is arguably the worst team in basketball with the dudes who they have out there right now. And the conversation that I've seen that spark among some people, Logan, is who has the worst situation around them? Is it Giannis or is it Jokic?
It's an interesting convo. The thing I'd say is I don't think a Jokic team could ever look as bad as the Bucks do because he enhances everybody else on the court, and that's the key dynamic to me. Jokic makes everybody that plays with him so much better that I don't think a team led out by Jokic could ever be as bad as Milwaukee. Jokic is going to find out a way to drag you to 40-plus wins. You can put
take that number up. Take that number up.
Let me finish. I was just going to say, you could put some YMCA guys around Jokic, and they're going to figure out how to get 40 wins, right? Like, Jokic just does that. And also, Jokic has never had the caliber of player of Damian Lillard on his roster, right? Damian Lillard is leagues and miles above Jamal Murray at his apex, right? Like, Dame is just that kind of guy. So I think it's really close. I guess what I'd say is I don't think they have constructed a roster at all in Milwaukee that is conducive to helping Giannis and maximize his abilities, right? Everybody's slow. There's a lack of athleticism. There's a lack of defense. I think Giannis's supporting cast is worse, but again, man, it's like you take Jokic out of Denver. I don't know, man. What, that team wins 20 games, maybe?
Well, according to the on-off numbers, they are at a 1-win pace when he's not out there. So they win 1 game without Jokic.
That's the funniest stat of all time.
I know, it's insane.
That's hilarious. I guess I would say Giannis, but again, my fundamental point between these two guys is Jokic is that much better as an elevator, man. He makes everybody so much better. He is that much more unstoppable. He is that much greater than Giannis. And I think Giannis is one of the greatest players to ever play this game. I just think Jokic is that much better.
I do think that Jokic is better. I do think that Jokic is the greatest offensive player, the greatest floor raiser that we've ever seen on the offensive end, one of the greatest floor raisers overall that we've ever seen, period. And the trend that we've seen year over year is just the complete disaster that they are with him off the court. I went and looked back all the way since the 21-22 season. And so now we're talking about 3+ years of data. And per 48 minutes, when Jokic is on the floor, Denver outscores opposing teams by 11.3 points. And when he's off the floor, they are outscored by 10.2 points per 48 minutes. So that is a more than 21-point swing. That would mean that with Jokic on the floor, they're the best team in basketball. With Jokic off the floor, they're the worst team in basketball. We talk about this every year. It's true over a 4-year sample now. You compare that to Giannis over the years, the difference isn't as stark. With him on the floor, they're +7 per 48 minutes. With him off the floor, they're -2.4. And so I think the inclination of some people, when they see those numbers, when they look at how bad the Nuggets have been without Jokic on the floor this year, would say, hey, I get that the Nuggets are a better team. That's just because Jokic is that much better. And while I do agree that Jokic is better, I also think what we have to keep in mind with the Nuggets roster is that it is constructed around Nikola Jokic. Now, Nikola Jokic would elevate just about any group of players to be an amazing offense, but the guys around him have specific limitations that are very much exposed when he's off the floor, and they have specific strengths that are complementary to his skill set. Jamal Murray is a guy who is not an advantage creator, right? He is not somebody who can float your offense. He is not going to get downhill and get easy shots for himself. He is not a very high-level playmaker. But with Nikola Jokic, that two-man game is really dynamic. And when you can create space for him with the screen, well, he's a phenomenal pull-up jump shooter. Michael Porter Jr., one of the absolute best spot-up shooters on the planet. He's just an off-ball weapon, not somebody who can create with the ball in their hands. But when you have Jokic, who is facilitating damn near every possession, right, and is the best passer in the league and is drawing all this extra defensive attention and touching the ball 115 times a game, you don't need MPJ to be a threat off the bounce. Aaron Gordon, just being the weapon that he is in the dunker spot. Well, nobody in basketball basically would be as conducive to him succeeding as Nikola Jokic. But he is a really good fit. Also, the Nuggets have just been so bad defensively and overall in terms of their backup center over the years that, like, they crater because of that when Jokic is off the floor, because they just don't have a guy who is capable. They really haven't had a guy who's capable on either end of the floor to take up those minutes when Jokic is off. So I understand that the Nuggets look really, really bad with Jokic not out there, but I do think that undersells the actual ability of these guys. Like, in their roles, I love Aaron Gordon. I didn't think there was ever reason to worry about Michael Porter Jr. Jamal is the one dude who has had to be better for a year plus, who I can understand having some concern about, but I think I'm still more optimistic about him than most other people. And I think that before we really hit the panic button with him for this season, we need to see more of him with Nikola Jokic, because that is the role in which he is set up to succeed. He can't float an offense on his own. That's not his skill set. But you put these guys together, you put Christian Braun on the floor, who is great at his role, but if you need more offensive creation, well, that's not good. Jokic is the all-in-one offensive creator that allows all of these guys who really are role players. I mean, Jamal is more than that, but even still, like, is definitely meant to be a second option with Nikola Jokic. That is the role that he is meant to play in, where he looks much better than he would anywhere else. They do have those roles, but they are really good in those roles when Jokic is on the floor. So all that to say, yes, he absolutely elevates all these guys and makes them look much better, but the roster is also built around him. Whereas I just think, like, Milwaukee's roster isn't good, and we can talk about the depth with the Nuggets. I like their depth more, dude. I like Julian Strawther. I like Peyton Watson, right? I like how these guys compete. I like how they defend. I like the shooting you get from a Strawther. The Bucks' depth, I think, just sucks. I think that their defensive problems around Giannis just cannot be fixed. Giannis does have a Dame, but outside of that, I think that the roster around Jokic is better. I think it is better constructed in the short term in terms of fit, more complementary. And the big thing to me when we talk about who's in the worst situation isn't just for this year. It's when we look at the big picture. That's where the Bucks are screwed. That's where I think they're in a really dark place, because they have committed to 37-year-old Brook Lopez, who after this year could just walk. But then what are you doing at the center spot, right? You weren't able to get any value back for him. Chris Middleton, 33 years old, injury prone. Damian Lillard, 33 years old. All of these dudes are only getting older and slower and worse. Whereas the Nuggets have a strategy that people have been critical of, but they have maintained these core four pieces who I do believe absolutely can be the top four on a title team again if you put the right dudes around them. And yeah, they lost Bruce Brown. They couldn't have matched the money he got. They lost KCP. Apparently KCP just wanted to go to Orlando. But at least with their draft and develop strategy, Christian Braun is a dude. Julian Strawther has been encouraging. Peyton Watson, as of late, has been playing well. And all their core four dudes are still in their 20s. So Jokic is the best player on the planet, and he is better than Giannis. But a big reason that the Nuggets window to me is much more open is because of the flexibility they have around these core four guys, and because of the fact that those core four guys aren't getting worse, right? That they are still in their primes and will be for several more years. So I do think that Giannis is in the worst situation. Now, I do agree. I don't think there's a roster in basketball that Jokic wouldn't drag close to 50 wins. I mean, just look at what he did in 2022, right? That was one of the worst rosters in basketball, and they played at a 50-win pace when he was on the floor in games that he played. I don't think that there's a team that Jokic could be 5-9 with right now, but Giannis is amazing. Giannis is the second best player on the planet, and I do think he's in a worse situation.
Yeah, the Bucks stink, and the coaching staff sucks. And
that's another thing. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
I think Michael Malone is a good coach. I think he gets over-criticized at times. I think Doc Rivers is a terrible coach.
And he's got Darvin ham sandwich over there with his hands in his pockets. Dude, those memes kill me where it'll be like him with an iPad showing Bobby Portis something, and it's like Dora the Explorer or something, man. Like,
Darvin, man. He's never going to be redeemed in the public eye. Failing as the Lakers head coach is tough. Salute, man. That's a leader of men right there. That's who Embiid needs to be studying. Darvin Ham.
I feel bad for Giannis. Yeah, the only way I see this ending is Giannis forcing his way out, and it's all the Bucks' fault. I mean,
yeah,
There's just going to come a breaking point where he looks around, and what sucks is it's every decision along the way. It's not just one decision, right? Because you can go back and you can say, oh, well, maybe the Bucks should have held on to Drew Holiday to keep their defensive identity and their perimeter defense wouldn't be as bad. But it's not just that one move. Like the one that, and this isn't the nail in the coffin, but it's like, again, we bring this one up often when we talk about the Bucks, but it's like, oh, yeah, let's draft A.J. Johnson instead of like a win-now player that would help Giannis in a rotation. Right. It's like, and that's the difference. The Nuggets just have more rotational NBA players than the Bucks. The Bucks just don't. They're thin. We'll see what they look like, man, with Chris Middleton. But to me, that just doesn't fix any of their core issues. They're slow. They're unathletic. They're old. And, I see Giannis asking his way out and being on a new team in the next 3 years. I just think it's an inevitability at this point. The Bucks are too far away.
And realistically, 2021, when they won their title, was much closer to the end of their title window than I think a lot of us initially thought. And that, to me, is the biggest thing. It's not about losing Drew, adding Dame, even though that obviously hasn't gone as they hoped and their defense has cratered. They weren't in a position on that roster with Drew to win a title, right? I mean, it's just everybody on the team is getting older and worse and older and worse, and they didn't address that. And this is ultimately the point that you reach when that is your approach to roster building. And Denver is not in that spot. And that's why I'm much, much, much more optimistic about them. I think they're a better team now. I also think they are absolutely better set up in the long term. And I think that people comparing those two teams throughout the year, I think that stopped now because Denver reeled off 5 straight wins with Jokic on the floor. But early in the year, people were panicking about them equally, if not more about the Nuggets. And to me, that never made sense. The Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All 30 teams split into 6 groups every Tuesday and Friday, playing for the right to advance in the single elimination in-season tourney, culminating in the NBA Cup Championship in Vegas. First time, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins.
Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Logan, let's talk about the hottest team in basketball. The Orlando Magic have won 6 straight games. That is, of course, with Paolo Banchero out for quite some time still with his injury. What does this win streak tell you about Orlando?
The defense is legit. It hasn't been without not just Paolo Banchero. They've been out Wendell Carter Jr. too. That's what's crazy. Over this streak, they've been number 1 in defensive rating and number 1 in net rating. Now, to preface this before we get into the segment, they do have wins over the Pelicans, the Wizards, the Hornets, and the 76ers. So, not the most impressive stretch. But they also have a win over the Suns most recently and a win over the Pacers. Franz Wagner has returned to form. He's given you 29, 6, and 6 over the last 6 games. And Mo Wagner, his brother, has given you 14 a night on 61% from the field and 42% from deep. And the Wagner brothers have been very impressive. It's been the defense to me that has been the most impressive thing. Specifically, I want to give a shout out to Anthony Black, man. Anthony Black is playing really, really well right now. And I just love his instincts and his feel, right? That was always the sell about Anthony Black as a prospect because he struggled putting the ball in the basket. That was the knock on him, but he was a really good playmaker and decision maker, and defensively, he just got it. He's got 8 steals over the last 3 games, and he's got 6 blocks over the last 6 games. Like, just being connected with this defense, right? Making plays as a help side rim protector, jumping passing lanes when the opportunity presents itself. And it's this entire defense, man. They all play so connected. Jonathan Isaac has done a really good job of anchoring the 5. So is Goga Batadze stepping up, them splitting time there. It's really everybody, man, from Suggs to those guys to KCP to your boy Tristan Da Silva. That's really what's crazy, right? Is the Orlando Orlando's success over the past 2 years has always been predicated on the defensive side of the basketball, right? Last season, they were number 3 in defensive rating. Over this stretch, they're number 1 in defensive rating. But it's not the top end guys. It is everybody from the top of the roster to the bottom that can give you good defensive minutes. There's really no weak spots in this rotation. And that's what's blown me away. It's been really encouraging me with Franz having the ball in his hands that he's been able to produce like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I wonder, though, Carson, is I wonder if a part of Franz's struggles is like him being in a rhythm. You know what I mean? Is him not touching the ball as much when Paolo's out there. And that's not a knock on Paolo, because I think Paolo is the better offensive player. And I think Paolo has a different ceiling that he can reach than Franz. Totally. I just wonder when Paolo's out there, right? It's a rhythm thing. It's kind of like with Garland, right? I wonder if Garland going through dry spells because Mitchell has the ball in his hands, right? It's just tough when you're not taking as many shots, getting that feel down. I want him to do this more when Paolo's available, pull his weight, but it's tough when you're not touching the ball. It's just easier, right? I'm going to take 20 shots tonight. I'm going to have my touchdown. I'm going to figure it out. But he has been impressive. They've needed somebody to step up. He has stepped up in a big way. And with this defensive foundation, you don't need a ton from your offense, man, when you can do what they've been doing defensively. So it's always the defense here with Orlando. Everybody, top to bottom, has been impressive. And Franz's return to form has been impressive. I just wonder, my only concern is just how he looks when Paolo returns and he doesn't have the ball in his hands as much. But the most impressive guys to me have been Franz and Anthony Black. Anthony Black has stepped up, and he's the guy I'm most excited about in this rotation.
He has been really good. I mean, especially last game, he really stepped up offensively against the Suns and was super impressive. I think this win streak tells you a few things about the Magic. I think it tells you, A, what the foundation of this team has always been, and that is an elite defense. And this is just one of the fallacies that I think people often fall into. We talked about this a lot with Orlando last year, and it's not to take away from Paolo, but Paolo last year in the regular season was undeniably a below-average offensive number 1, right? He really struggled with efficiency. The Magic were statistically a worse team with him on the floor. That's not to say that he isn't an incredibly gifted young player who this year I think has taken a leap and I think has the ceiling to be like a back end of the top 10 kind of player in the league. But there's this notion of, okay, he's the face, right? He's the face of the offense. He's the young guy. And even if he's putting up these volume stats, right, we want to give the credit to that guy. But it's like, no, the reason that the Magic were a playoff team last year is because they were an elite defense. And they're going to be able to find a pretty good NBA player who can eat up the offensive volume they need to just be not even good on that end. I mean, they weren't good offensively ever last year, not in the regular season, not in the playoffs, and they still made the playoffs, and they still went 7. And Paolo was really good in the playoff series. I want to be clear. I'm just saying this team has a 95.6 defensive rating in their 6-game win streak. They have the number 1 defense since Paolo got hurt. That is what makes this team awesome, and they've been able to maintain that even in the absence of their best player. The other thing that I think this streak has told you is that Franz Wagner is him, and he's hooping. I mean, he's giving you 23, 5, and 5 on 57% true shooting this season, which is huge. I've been a Franz believer. I've had the expectation that he could be like a top 25 player in this league. He just checks so many boxes, does so many things at a high level. But last year was tough for him, really just because of the complete absence of his three-point shot. And in the playoff series, he was inconsistent. He had some really high highs, and then he had just an absolutely atrocious Game 7. It's big to me to see him in a rhythm like this, being this confident, being this assertive, seeing the 3-ball falling, shooting 36% from deep. He's such an awesome driver. He's always had great change in pace there, and he's always been a really skilled finisher, and he's a really good playmaker for his size. But it is so important to this team's ceiling that they get the best version of Franz. You cannot undersell his importance, because with some of the offensive skill limitations around Paolo and Franz, like, they need those two to be consistent avenues to solid offense. You can't just rely on Paolo, and his role is going to be different with Paolo back. That is one thing, right? More off-ball work for Franz, I think, can be a little bit of a struggle for him. He's not a great catch and shoot player. He is best with the ball in his hands, but just seeing him hoop like this is great to me, and it's encouraging about what this team can achieve, and it's encouraging about him reaching the ceiling that I've been optimistic about him reaching. And the last thing that I would say this tells you is Orlando's depth is really good. I agree with you there. Tristan da Silva, my guy, one of my favorite prospects in this draft. He's struggled as a scorer, but he's valuable out there as a big body, as a multi-positional defender, really as a connective passer. He already is popping. Anthony Black, the playmaking is really good. The defense is awesome. He looks more comfortable as a scorer. Athletically, he's really impressive as a driver. And the ability of these guys to step up in the absence of Wendell Carter Jr., if it's Goga Batadze, if it's Mo Wagner, if it is Jonathan Isaac filling it in at the 5, they're still getting quality center minutes. This team is just really good, man, and they really scrap, and they defend their asses off, and they have a lot of good basketball players. And when Paolo is back, they're going to be awesome because that's just what they need, right? They need that high-end offensive punch. And the Paolo that we were seeing early this year was a better player than last year, was a guy who was playing at, a fringe top 20 sort of level. And if you get that sort of offense and you get a better version of Franz, and KCP's really struggled offensively this year, but the shooting around those guys is better this year, that's the Orlando team that we would have hoped to see. I think that is definitely a top 4 team in the East.
Yeah.
A team nobody wants to play, a team that should win a playoff series. I mean, there's always the possibility that Philly gets it together. I don't think they're going to get a top 4 seed, but, could they reach their ceiling where everything's gelling and they're the 4th best team in the East? It's possible, but I think Orlando has the more consistent, reliable formula there.
I agree with you. I think they could climb up to number 4 in my East hierarchy and probably nab a top 4 seed. Against Indiana, against Philadelphia, and against Milwaukee, I do think it's a toss-up, but...
Really? Indiana? In Milwaukee? I just feel like with those teams' defensive issues, Orlando still has their offensive issues, but they're so elite defensively, and I do think their offense, with Paolo out there, will be significantly better than last year.
It all just hinges on Paolo and Franz. I worry about Franz as a number 2 when he's out of rhythm, and I don't know how Paolo's going to come back and look at full health, right? Sometimes it just takes a couple of weeks or a month. But if we get the version of Paolo, I agree with you. If they continue with this trajectory, I would be disappointed if Orlando didn't win a playoff series. All I'm saying is we've seen Paolo last year settling for tough jumpers, right? If he reverts to that at all, if Franz regresses back to the way he was, I could see them getting upset by an Indiana, by a Philadelphia, by a Milwaukee. I would be disappointed, though, and I expect them to win a playoff series. But I'm very high on Orlando. I thought they could get the 2 seed in the East. I think with Paolo's injury, it's tough, but they're not out of the race there.
For the 2 seed, top 2 seeds are going to be
probably.
Cleveland and Boston.
Cleveland and Boston is tough.
There, yeah.
But I could see them maybe outpacing New York. New York and Orlando is going to be interesting in that 3-4 spot, but I think Orlando should win a playoff series this year. That's my expectation. Anything less, and I'm going to be disappointed. But I gotta give credit to this team, top to bottom, and I gotta give credit to Jamal Mosley, man. I think that a turnaround this quick is really impressive, and they've got a lot of young talent. And the biggest thing is just all of them are committed, and they're all committed to winning defensively. It's hard to get teams to do that, but you see it with Houston, with Oklahoma City, with Orlando. All of these teams are bought in and playing hard in winning on the defensive end, and that's how you win important basketball games. They don't lack on that side at all, and it's really encouraging to be doing this, again, down Paolo and down Wendell Carter Jr.
Healthy Philly would be tough because of the offensive ceiling they have, but also, dude, what did we just say about not giving them the benefit of the doubt? I mean, Philly sucks right now, and Orlando, without their best player, is a good basketball team.
All I'm saying is I would pick Orlando. There is just a chance.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I'm thinking the same thing over here, right? I'm thinking about what Philly can be. It's just so frustrating when they aren't close to that right now. Things are going to look better for them.
Committed.
I just want to give credit to Orlando.
Orlando's committed.
Orlando's committed, man. They win games. They win games without their best player, and that's a testament to a good team. That's a testament to a good organization. And they are just among that group of young defenses, man, right now. It's super fun.
Great culture, man.
Houston, OKC. We've never seen young teams defend at this level where it's just like, hey, we have the best athletes and we're ahead of the curve compared to where young dudes normally are. And we're committed to this end and we're connected on that end. It's been really impressive what we're seeing from all these young defenses. We expected it from Orlando, but nevertheless, it's awesome when it can be the backbone of a stretch like this without Paolo. Shall we talk about White Boy of the Year candidate Dalton Knecht, Logan? Because that, after the Cavs-Celtics game, was the biggest news in last night's action. Dalton Knecht ends with 37 and had 22 straight points for the LA Lakers. And he's part of a very interesting rookie class, a rookie class that we knew did not have the top-end talent that we're accustomed to, but also that we talked about throughout the draft process, did have some gems in there, did have some more pro-ready contributors you might be able to get in the mid-late first, Knecht being absolutely one of them. Do you think he's been the most impressive rookie, Logan? And if not, who has been?
I think he has, and that's the thing I love about the NBA drafts, right, is there's always this dynamic about hitting your timeline and making sure that you're drafting the right guy, right, because there's guys at the top of the draft that have insane potential. There's always going to be guys in the 10 to 30 range that can contribute to winning now, and that's why I couldn't believe that Knecht dropped to 17. I get he was an older prospect. Had spent a lot of time in college, right, but he was so pro-ready. I had him as a top 10 guy. I thought, you take him in the top 10, you don't worry about, can he be as great as some of these guys in the long term? He's going to win you basketball games right now, and that's exactly what he's doing. This season, he's averaging 11 points per game on 52% from the field, 46% from deep, on 69% true shooting. Right now, Dalton Knecht has the highest true shooting percentage of any rookie who has averaged 10 points per game in NBA history. Anybody. He is a wired bucket. Specifically spotting up, he's averaging 1.56 points per spot-up possession. That's 98th percentile. It's ridiculous.
Good night, nurse.
When you think about the archetype that you want alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis, he is the perfect weapon. When those guys garner attention and get double teams, he is going to make you pay for leaving him alone. And it's not just spotting up, it's also cutting. Anthony Davis has a beautiful feed to him on a backdoor cut when a guy falls asleep. He was busting Utah's zone in the half court all night. He's got the backdoor cut, but he's also got 3 straight left-wing threes against their zone that he just bangs. Like you say, he has 22 straight points. He's running in transition. It's just little stuff. Like, he has 2 alley-oop dunks where he just beats all of the Jazz team down in transition. He just does the winning things. The Lakers are running plays for this kid. Pin downs and screens off ball for him that he's knocking down. He's a winner. He's a winner. And I think it's also reflected in his analytic numbers on the offensive side of the ball. They're 15.5 points better offensively with Knecht per 100 possessions. They have an offensive rating of 127.3 with Knecht on the floor. Granted, he's playing a lot with LeBron and Anthony Davis and Reeves and D'Lo, right? Those are great offensive players that are going to lead to great offenses. But he enhances them. He is a weapon. He is one of the most pro-ready offensive players I've seen, man. He gets it. And he doesn't need the ball in his hands. I think he's a little bit underrated as a pick-and-roll ball handler. He can do a little bit there.
Yeah.
But he is an off-ball weapon. And those guys are at a premium where you can just put them alongside anybody and they're going to get you buckets. They're invaluable, right? Because some guys can stagnate your offense and some guys do need the ball in their hands. Knecht doesn't. He is going to – it's that Clay or Markkanen, value, right? And I don't mean at that level of those guys, right, but the type of value that they bring as off-ball weapons. Knecht brings that. And I'm so glad that the Lakers – nailed this pick, right? Because they didn't pick up the option on Jalen Hood-Schifino. They're probably going to let him go. That's a wasted draft pick when you passed on guys like Jaime Jaquez Jr., when you passed on guys like Brandon Podziemski. And I'm glad that they didn't double down on drafting a player like that. They went and got the pro-ready guy for their pro-ready timeline. And he's a wired bucket. He's a winner. I can't sing his praises enough. This is how I felt about Knecht pre-draft.
Yeah.
I'm glad that he went to a win-now team, and I hope teams are kicking themselves for letting him drop to 17, man, because I think he's arguably the steal of the draft right now.
Well, and also it was just so perfect for the Lakers because of their timeline. We both viewed this as an absolute home run at the time. Knecht was the most pro-ready, most polished, most skilled scorer in the class. He was the most pro-ready offensive player, period. And what the hell do the Lakers care if he's 23 years old? They're trying to go out there and put the best team that they can around LeBron and AD. I think the Knecht has been outstanding this year. I mean, the last 4 games, Logan, 24 points per game on 88% true shooting, 68% from 3. And that's on 8 attempts a game. Like, just flat out, he is one of the absolute best shooters in the sport. And he's one of the best off-ball movers in the sport. He's 52% from the corners. He's 44% on above-the-break threes. And what's rare is to not just get a shooter of this ability, but to get a shooter of this ability at this size, where you're talking about 6'6", who also has this awareness of how to be an effective off-ball mover, and that includes cutting. He's an excellent cutting guard wing, who is also, at the very least, solid as an athlete and solid as a self-creator. You mentioned, I think that his on-ball chops can be underrated as well. He's not great there. That's not what makes him special. That is his ability off ball, but also, like we've seen, he's not sped up as a driver, right? He's a little shifty there. He can take some contact. He's got a good frame. He's a skilled finisher in the lane. Like, this is not just a spot-up shooter. This is a complete all-around scoring machine. I remember we went on with Jayson a couple weeks ago. You asked if he could score 20 points per game in the league. Good question, man. I mean, I think that the answer is in the right situation. Absolutely. The dude is a stone-cold bucket and has been phenomenal. Not surprisingly, right? I think you would have expected him to be one of the few best rookies, but 22 straight points, yeah, bro. That's surprising. Back-to-back games with 27 and 37. That is so impressive, and especially considering that the Lakers' bench around him has been underwhelming. I mean, he has just been such a bright light for them. Do you think when Rui is back out there healthy that he should keep starting? Because I'm seeing some chitter-chatter about that now.
I don't. I mean, I guess it depends on certain matchups. Like,
You don't think that Knecht should start, or you don't think that Rui should start?
I thought you were saying Rui. No, I think Knecht should start. I wouldn't
For
start.
Rui or for D'Lo?
That's an interesting question.
Because I kind of think he should start for D'Lo, and I think that then you get D'Lo just running the second unit, which I think is where he's at his absolute best. Knecht, limited defender. Both these guys are going to be limited defenders, but
I just want Knecht to get minutes. Athlete. And I think it's a little redundant having D'Lo and Reeves out there. I've always felt that way, right? You don't need 2 liabilities defensively and both ball handlers.
And Knecht doesn't solve the defensive thing, but he does solve the offensive fit of just being a complete off-ball weapon alongside Reeves, LeBron, AD. That's ideal.
And once Vando gets healthy, too, you have a little bit of versatility there where you could have another defender on the floor. But I just think Knecht is like that, man. I want Knecht playing big minutes because he swings games. Oh, yeah. Shooters like this swing games. And he just manufactures buckets within the flow of the offense where, like I said, they draw up beautiful plays for him, pin downs, screens off ball where he's cutting across the floor. And he's just a better shooter than like D'Lo, too. But he, again, gets buckets that you're not accounting for, where he's cutting off of an AD post-up. I love it, man. Guys fall asleep. It's so funny on tape. Guys fall asleep in the corner all the time. Some of the best defenders on the planet fall asleep just ball watching. And Knecht is looking at the back of the guy's head. The second that his head turns, he's cutting on that backdoor lane. He just does little stuff. I want Knecht just playing big minutes, man. I think he's a winner. I think he's a more complimentary offensive player. And, again, I just think he does more. He's a little more versatile than D'Lo. He's not going to be able to kill you in isolation or out of the pick and roll as well as D'Lo can at his apex. But he's going to do all the little complimentary stuff. And he gets it. I like Knecht a lot, man. I would. I would just – and if you're not starting him, I would just at least find a way to play this guy 20 to 25 minutes a night. I think Knecht has earned that.
If the Lakers – could be a decent defense, if they didn't have the worst defensive personnel in the league around AD of any serious team, and if they weren't also the worst transition defense in basketball, I would love them so much. I mean, this offense is amazing, right? Last year's offense was really, really good. better than it got credit for. Number 3 offense for more than half of the year, second half of the season. This offense is better, though, bro. I mean, and Knecht is an absolute weapon, and I agree. I mean, he's just a guy you have to play. It feels like 25 minutes a night. He's just too lethal as an offensive player. I am going to give a shout-out to another guy, though, as the most impressive rookie. I'm going to shout out Jared McCain, and I think what Knecht is doing is in some ways more impressive because the context is winning basketball games. I also think on the flip side of that, Jared McCain is having to step up as his team's perimeter number 1 option, and he's actually really producing there and is doing so with efficiency. And also, I just didn't expect this from McCain as much as I did from Knecht, right? I liked McCain as a prospect, but Knecht, it was like, okay, he's the most pro-ready scorer in this class, and this is a phenomenal fit for him. For McCain to be doing this, where he's over 15 a night on 61% true shooting on the season, and in the 6 games since Maxey got hurt, 25 points per game on 64% true shooting. That is wildly impressive. His shooting is his biggest weapon. It always has been. He's 49% from deep on catch and shoot looks. But I've been impressed by his all-around game. I've been impressed by his ability to create for himself off the bounce as a limited athlete, smaller guy, but 29% of his shots are coming in the restricted area. He's not a great finisher there because of some of those size and athletic limitations, but he's getting there, and his skill as a finisher is there. His pace as a driver has really impressed me. His ability to stop and pop and use the mid-range. He's not a wow you passer, but he has really nice feel there. And it's just so impressive, dude, to be ready for the moment like this, to have this sort of burden on you. Jared McCain wasn't expecting that. Jared McCain wasn't expecting, oh yeah, on the team with Joel Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey, I'm going to be the guy who is stepping up as our leading scorer more nights than not in this recent stretch. Like, that's crazy. The Heat blitzed him on a pick and roll that he was running with Joel Embiid, Logan. Like, I've been super impressed by both these guys. I've just been more surprised by McCain. And I think the volume that he's had to take on, it's so hard. And as so much has gone wrong with the Sixers, he's the dude who has like completely over-delivered.
Yeah, I'm surprised by this too, and he'd be number 2 for me. Last 6 games, he's 25 points, 4 assists a night on 48% from the field, 44% from deep, and 63.8% true shooting. McCain's dangerous coming off handoffs and screens, and I do think that he's weaponized a little bit more by Joel Embiid because of Embiid's gravity as a player and also how good of a screen setter he is, but I wasn't expecting this, and he's deceptively quick. That's the thing that has impressed me the most about McCain is, like, I thought he was a good shooter. He's a better movement shooter than I expected, and he's ready to fire at all times. But how he's been able to get downhill and finish within the paint, and he's just quick. He's quicker than I thought, and he's a weapon. I didn't expect McCain to be this good, this quick. I think he's number 2 for me right now. He's a good shout. I'd also shout out a pair of Grizzlies. I think there's levels to this. Edey's been good, not great. Edey gets picked on a lot in space. That's not really surprising.
Yeah.
Jalen Wells has been good in games too, well-rounded. And then Alex Sarr, obviously not what he's brought offensively, but I think Sarr's been good defensively. So those would be my shouts. But I think McCain and Knecht are head of the pack right now.
I would shout out Stephon Castle as well. I just think athletically you see his impact. I think as a playmaker you see his impact. Unsurprisingly, the efficiency isn't there. The shooting isn't there. That was the question about him as a top 5 pick, but the stuff that you expected to be good with him has been good. Ryan Dunn, I still think has been really good this season, right? That we sort of talked about that a lot in the early goings, but I've seen some people act like, oh my God, well, Ryan Dunn has completely fallen off as a shooter. Everybody was fooled. Look, the fact that Ryan Dunn is taking over 4 threes a game and making 32% of them, any preseason expectation would have deemed that a success. He wasn't going to keep shooting 40%, of course. He's taking them. He's making a just below average. You will take below average shooting from Ryan Dunn if he's willing to take those shots with what he does defensively. So those are all good shouts. Kyle Filipowski, I've really liked in his minutes. I think that he should have been drafted significantly higher. And Edey, I thought was going to win Rookie of the Year. I think the offensive production and efficiency is obviously there. We've seen a little bit of the Jonas Valanciunas
Dude.
floor spacing, as I referred to it with him as a prospect, where it's like, yeah, the guy takes 1-3 a game, but you know what? He can actually make that 1-3 a game. It's not super valuable, but hey, it's something. And he didn't have that in his bag in college. But yeah, defensively, I think it's been worse than I expected. The stuff in space was always going to be ugly. He hasn't been as effective a rim protector as I hoped that he would be, though. I still would like to see him playing a little more. It feels like Taylor Jenkins is kind of dialing back his minutes some as of late. But, I mean, in the scope of this rookie class, he's still been good. He's still been productive. Like, that's the thing, dude. It's not really that surprising when it's like the 16th, the 17th, the 9th pick, the 28th pick in this draft class are the dudes who are stepping up and balling out, because the top of this draft was always shaky, especially in terms of Sasha, Sarr being guys who were going to contribute immediately with both of their offensive issues for Sarr. Sasha just having things that need to be refined all around, but I don't think either of those guys have been disappointing based on my expectations. Enough about basketball, Logan. Enough about the failing NBA. Let's do our NFL power rankings. We'll go through these suckers pretty quick, but who do you have as the number one team in the league right now?
I still have the Kansas City Chiefs. I know that may come as a surprise to some people coming off their loss. Still have a top 5 defense to me, still have the best quarterback in football, but they are vulnerable. And I've said that, I've held that stance the entire way through. During their winning streak, 12 of their 15 games were decided by one score. They had the worst point differential of any team that had started out 9-0 in NFL history. So we've always known they were vulnerable. They play a bad game, in my opinion, a bad Chiefs game to the Bills. To me, it said more about the Bills than it did about the Chiefs. Just that the Bills are the best contender in the AFC to the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are vulnerable. That's what it said to me. I still have the Chiefs as my number one team in my power rankings.
I have the Chiefs number 2. Honestly, my 1 through 3 are really, really close. I could kind of argue them in any direction. I have the Lions number 1 because I think they have the best offense in football. I think they have a dramatically improved defense. I think their offensive formula is just the easiest to execute week after week. My concern with them, the reason I consider dropping them to 3, ironically, even though they won by 46 this past week and won even though Jared Goff threw 5 picks the week before that, is because of the injury to Alex Anzalone. And he's supposed to come back in 6 to 8 weeks, but if he's not healthy for the playoffs, like, you combine that with the Hutchinson loss, which is obviously much bigger, but like, that's just a little concerning for this Lions defense, in my opinion. And it makes me wonder if I do trust the other 2 teams' defenses more, and I certainly trust their quarterbacks more, and those are the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. So I guess I'll just do it all at once right now. I have the Lions 1, I have the Chiefs 2, because I think that defense is amazing, and they have Patrick Mahomes. I just think they have some limitations offensively in terms of explosiveness, as we've seen. And then I have the Bills at 3. I think that the Bills' offense is amazing. I think it's better than the Chiefs, and we haven't seen the full force offense basically at all this entire year. I think that Josh is absolutely playing better than Patrick Mahomes right now. I think that he's playing as the best quarterback on the planet. Lamar Jackson is absolutely there, but I trust Josh more in a postseason setting. And the Bills' defense, I think, is playing some of the best football that they have really in Josh Allen's career right now. We've had some issues with the run defense throughout the year, but it hasn't been as pressing as of late. The Colts, you saw Jonathan Taylor have some success. Like, I'm not going to say that that isn't an issue, but they're great against the pass. The secondary, the corners specifically, are amazing. Terrell Bernard just won AFC Defensive Player of the Week. He's amazing. They're getting Matt Milano back. It's tempting for me to put the Bills right there on equal footing with the Chiefs. I think they're certainly the best candidate to beat them. At the end of the day, I just trust that Chiefs defense more. I think that Chiefs defense is so elite, and I think that they're better coached. I think Spags is a genius. But I like the Bills offense more, and I think that's going to be our AFC title game.
Yeah, we do a little flip-flop there. I have the Lions 2, the Bills 3. The Lions are the most complete team in football to me. Best offensive line in the game, best offense. They're the number 1 scoring offense. They're the 8th highest scoring offense on a points per game basis since 2000. And the defense has improved. They're top 5 in scoring. I agree with you. The Anzalone and Hutchinson injuries concern me. I like Trevor Nowatzki stepping up and being the next linebacker. He's not as good as Campbell or Anzalone, but he is solid. But, I mean, that's going to be the real test. Zadarius Smith also needs to be healthy, too. He went down in this most recent game. So they're way better than last year. The Lions don't have a hole in their team, and I agree with you. The reason is I just believe in that offense. But there are little bit concerns there. Bills are 3 for me. I trust Josh more than Lamar. The Baltimore defense has glaring holes. This being said, I think the Bills-Chiefs AFC title game hypothetical is going to come down and be matchup dependent. If the Bills run into the Ravens, I'm going to pick the Ravens to beat the Buffalo Bills. I just think they can exploit the Bills' weakness better than any other team in the AFC. If the Bills avoid the Ravens, I think we're going to get Bills-Chiefs in the AFC title game. So I think the Bills, just top to bottom, are better than Baltimore. Again, I trust Josh more than Lamar. I think the Baltimore defense has holes that the Bills don't. But it's matchup dependent. If the Bills and Ravens face off, I would take the Ravens to beat the Bills head-to-head.
It's a tough matchup. Obviously, we saw that in the bludgeoning earlier in the year. Context I would add to that. You didn't have Amari Cooper yet in that offense for the Bills. And you also didn't have the Bills' 3 best defensive players on the team, on the field. You didn't have Matt Milano, who is coming back. You didn't have Taron Johnson. You didn't have Terrell Bernard.
Cope harder, Bills, boy. Cope harder.
I'm just saying, I think that the Bills are the better football team. I'm not saying that I'm not concerned about that aspect of the matchup. I'm also saying, though, that the Bills' defense is playing a lot better now, and that group is going to be significantly healthier than it was. And I do trust Josh Allen more, and I trust the Bills' defense a lot more than the Ravens. I think the Bills can have much more success offensively against the Ravens in a rematch. So if it came down to it, I would pick the Bills. I understand you saying that the matchup is a factor for you, but I definitely think the Bills are the better team in a vacuum, and I would take them if we got that head-to-head again. Okay, my number 4 is the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that this team has impressed me the most relative to where I had them previously over the last few weeks. I mean, they've just been really reaching their ceiling. Defensively, they've been pretty dominant as of late, and we've seen them beat up on some bad offenses. We've also seen them keep some good offenses in check, the Commanders, the Bengals. So that's the thing. It's as stacked an offense as any in football with how great they are on the line, with how great their skill position talent is. And it's a really talented defense that now on the year is 6th in points allowed per drive, 3rd in yards allowed per drive. I'm not the biggest Jalen Hurts guy. He's playing better. He is definitely a question mark compared to some of these elite teams that we're talking about, but Philly is just so damn good all around that it's not enough for me to have them any lower than 4.
Yeah, I agree. The Eagles are also 4 for me. They're one of the most talented teams in the NFL, and they would be higher if I had more faith in Jalen Hurts or Nick Sirianni. I think the Eagles are arguably the 2nd most talented team in football behind Detroit. You could argue that, but
I think you could argue number 1.
You could. I legitimately think you could. I just don't have as much faith in Hurts and Sirianni as I would like. So that's why the Eagles are down at number 4. But I agree with you. Top to bottom, I don't think I could have Philly any lower than this.
Agreed. My number 5, sorry, Logan, I cut you in line when I did my 3 for 1 earlier. Deal with it. Is the Minnesota Vikings. I've gotten a little bit lower on the Vikings. I think that we've seen the ugly side of the Sam Darnold experience. I still think they're a really good football team, though. I still think that they're a pretty elite defense. I still think that they have awesome skill position talent. They're a very balanced offense. Their play calling is great. More the reason that I have Philly above them now is that Philly's blown me away than it is that I've become significantly more concerned about Minnesota. I've become a little more concerned, but I still think when we're talking about the most complete teams in football, they are on the very short list.
The 2 teams that have fallen the furthest for me in this week's power rankings are the Ravens, who have fallen to 5, and the Vikings, who have fallen even lower for me. The Ravens are at 5 because Lamar needs to prove himself in big games, and the secondary is the biggest red flag among any contender in football right now. They are undisciplined. They are untalented. They are bad.
Yeah.
And Kyle Hamilton has gotten injured in, I believe, both of the past 2 games for Baltimore. Kyle Hamilton's one of the best defensive players in football. The guy is everywhere. In the run game, in the passing game, they need Kyle Hamilton to go to the Super Bowl. They need Kyle Hamilton to go to the AFC title game. So
Yeah.
that's just something to watch over the next couple of weeks if he continues to. Because, I mean, that's why he got hurt in the Steelers game. He blew up a run play behind the line of scrimmage and then had to go out briefly.
Too much of a dog.
Something to monitor. If Hamilton is out there, I have a little more faith in the secondary. If Hamilton's not, I don't believe in this secondary at all. I think they're going to get cooked by everybody. So it's Lamar and Henry, but the reason they've fallen for me, because Baltimore and Kansas City have been lockstep 1 and 2 for me this entire season. And it's not because I believe that the Ravens are a, team without a hole top to bottom, but it's just because those holes have been more glaring recently. The secondary's become a bigger problem, and again, Lamar versus the Steelers is one thing, and I think it gets overplayed, but it is a concern. He's got to prove himself in big games. That's not a concern with Josh Allen. It's just not. That's why they're the third team in the AFC for me, and that's why they're at number 5.
They're my third team in the AFC too. I have them just one spot lower at number 6. Really comes down to the defense. Like, do I have some concerns about the offense being as good against a really good defense in the playoffs as they are in the regular season? Sure, I think that the Steelers game, although I'm with you, like they always play Lamar incredibly well. They might be the best defense in football. That's a really dramatic example, but that is like the red flag performance for the Ravens offense. I still think, though, they're an absolutely elite offense. I think they're a top 2 offense in football, probably. The problem is this defense. The problem is the secondary, this pass defense, where they've been among the worst in football all year. They're 22nd in points allowed per drive, and that's just led to some really bad losses this year. That's how you lose a game to the Browns. That's how you lose a game to the Raiders when they couldn't get a stop on multiple consecutive drives against the Raiders. That's why I have them here. Versus Minnesota, it's really close. Like, yeah, I trust Lamar Jackson infinitely more than I do Sam Darnold. But when we're talking about the complete team factor, the Ravens have the biggest red flag. They have the biggest hole of any team that we've addressed up to this point, and that is their pass defense.
Yeah, I get that. And the next 4 teams, including Baltimore, I guess I'll just get this out of the way. Everybody else, I just have more confidence in than Sam Darnold, and that's why the Vikings have fallen for me. So I have the Packers in my 6th spot, and it's really to do with the Jordan Love-Darnold debate. And I know Love has been reckless at times with the football. Like, sometimes he's just careless. The Packers' offense strikes so quick. Like, they just manufacture shot plays at a higher rate than almost anybody else, other than probably Detroit in football. I like that aspect of Green Bay. They're a big play defense. They manufacture turnovers. They're just a big play team. I like their running game more than ever. Jordan Love hits on big shot plays every single drive, it feels like, and the defense shows up when they need them. So Green Bay's at number 6 for me, and like I said, everybody else above the Vikings, it is because of Sam Darnold. It's because I just believe in their quarterbacks more.
Okay, that's interesting. For me, the gap between these two defenses goes in Minnesota's favor. That outweighs, I think, the offensive gap between these two teams, but I don't think it's a big gap in either direction. My number 7 team, Logan, is your Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that this is an incredible defense. I think it is a defense that arguably has the most potential to disrupt opposing offenses in football, and I think it is the best Steelers offense that we've seen easily in a half decade. And I think it's a pretty average offense at the end of the day, but average is a big step up. So when they are just this dominant on the defensive side, when they are this capable of making swing plays on that end, and when they can put forth a solid offense with Russ there under center, with George Pickens, with a little bit more explosiveness in the vertical passing game, and with the ability to run the ball at a solid level, I really like the Steelers. I think that there's a difference between the teams that have contending ceilings in them, because I think to win the Super Bowl, you have to be able to string together multiple really good offensive performances. That's the one limitation of the Steelers. But against inferior teams, I think they can just eat them alive defensively and do enough offensively.
Yeah, I have the Steelers at number 8. I agree with you. I think they're the best defense in football, and it's the most reliable quarterback the Steelers have had post-Big Ben. They're number 8 for me, though, because they still need to prove themselves in the red zone. Since Russell Wilson has taken over at quarterback, they're 30th in red zone scoring. And Russ in the red zone specifically is 7 of 24. He's completing under 30% of his passes for 49 total yards. That's 2 yards per attempt. He's got 5 TDs and a pick, but Justin Fields was unequivocally better in the red zone. I think Russ makes this offense way better with what he can do vertically with George Pickens and just getting that man the football. The Steelers' offense, I have said it for years now. I feel like I'm screaming into a void until this year. Get the ball to George Pickens. Good things are going to happen. Russ brings that dynamic. That's why the offense is better. But at number 7, I have a team that the Steelers actually beat and a team that is debuting in my top 10 of my power rankings this season, and that's the Los Angeles Chargers. The reason I have them here, the Vikings defense is better than the Chargers defense. The Steelers defense is better than the Chargers defense. Justin Herbert is playing MVP level football right now, and that's the difference to me. When I have a tiebreaker between football teams, your defense can be leagues better than other teams. There's a different level of faith I have in the quarterback with LA, and Herbert is playing MVP level football. I just have a different level of faith in Justin Herbert, and that's why they're number 7.
That's fair. I have them one spot lower. I have them at number 8, and I want to see this defense continue to be tested because the number 1 scoring defense in football thing to me is fake. I mean, that is a product of some of the very bad offenses they faced in the second half against Cincinnati was concerning. I still think it's a good defense, though, and Justin Herbert is just playing out of his damn mind. I just think if you give a player at this level a top 5 quarterback in arguably a defense of this caliber, that's a really good formula. And even when the situation around him isn't great offensively, not too worried. They have Justin Herbert, and they don't need to be the most dynamic offense in football because it's going to be the combination of that defense and that elite quarterback play. That's why I trust them more than the teams that I have below them. So we have those two flipped, the Steelers and Chargers at 7 and 8.
And at number 9, I have the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
It's all because of Sam Darnold. I don't really need to dress this up. They're a top 3 defense in football. I love their skill position talent, from Aaron Jones to Jettas to Hawkinson to Naylor to Addison. They're loaded. And I like their offensive line, too. It's Sam Darnold. He needs to prove himself. He leads the NFL in turnovers right now with 14. I'm just slowly souring on the boy Sam. I trust Russell Wilson more. I trust Justin Herbert more.
Oh, yeah.
Love, Lamar, Hurts, anybody above him. That's why the Vikings are at number 9. It's not a team thing. It's not a coaching thing. It's not an offensive skill thing. It's a Sam Darnold thing. That's why they're number 9.
I get it. In the last handful of weeks, I mean, since the bye, the Vikings haven't been as impressive as they were before the bye, right? I mean, the Lions game, I thought they played really well. The Rams game, that was a competitive loss to a good team, but their wins have been uglier. Colts game, more turnovers. Jags game was way closer than it should have been. Titans game was pretty good. They were in control of that game, but, you're facing the Titans. So I understand getting lower on them. I just still like so much about this football team. They check so many boxes, and I just think Darnold is okay. I don't think they can win the Super Bowl with him, but I think if they can get you to a title game, right? I mean, I think that they can win a couple of playoff games because the team is that good. So in my number 9 spot, I have the Green Bay Packers. I love this offense. I think that this defense is mediocre. Jordan Love, I really like at the end of the day. I do think compared to like the Chargers, right? There's just a stability I get with LA, and Herbert is playing at just a different level than you're getting from a Jordan Love right now. So I think the Packers are really good. I also think that they're flawed, and there's just teams that I look at and it's like, okay, the Vikings are going to be a good offense. They're going to be a great defense, right? The Packers are going to be a very good offense. They're going to be a mediocre defense. 9 feels like a good spot for them to me.
I just like, man, they just seem to manufacture big plays at such a high rate. I love that aspect of Green Bay. But
I get that. Well, Jordan Love just throws the ball off his back foot 65 yards downfield and says,
he might be the best watch, man. Like, Josh Allen's probably the best watch, actually. But
yeah, I mean, Love is a great watch, but also, like, if I were a Packers fan, I mean, I would love him, obviously. But also, I'd be like, bro, just, like, chill a little bit. Just, like, chill, like, 25% more. Because some of these throws are ill-advised, to say the least.
Certified non-chiller Jordan Love. In my 10 spot, I debated having San Francisco here, but considering that the 49ers are on the verge of not making the playoffs, I'd rather have a playoff team here, and that's the Houston Texans. The Texans are basically a playoff lock to me at this point with how bad the AFC South is, and I just know they're going to be there. I don't know what's going on if San Francisco is going to end up there or not. Basically, my next 4 teams off is the entirety of the NFC West. It is the Niners, Rams, Seahawks, and Cardinals in some sort of order.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm slowly souring on the Texans. They were on the verge of, like, entering that contender range. The interior of the offensive line is a joke. That dude, Juice Scruggs, sucks, man. That dude is Juice Scrubs. Get him off the field. Thanks.
Nice. You got to trademark that. You got to tweet that. Hashtag Juice Scrubs. And then you throw an LMAO and a skull emoji after. That's going to go viral. That'll go viral.
Little fire emoji. Yeah.
Fire emoji.
The interior offensive line concerns me, but I like the pass rush. I like the defense. The defense is solid. Yeah. I really like C.J. Stroud. The Texans are solid. That's why they're number 10. I don't look at them as a real contender. They have a glaring flaw with the interior of that offensive line, but I know the Texans are going to be in the playoffs. That's why they're number 10.
That's fair. I considered the Texans. I'm going to go with the Niners at 10, and I get it. There is a real chance that they don't make the playoffs, and the Texans are going to. But also, like, the Texans have such a Mickey Mouse division. The Niners still have a better point differential on the year, man. I don't think either of these teams are that good. I think both these teams are flawed. I think both these teams are underwhelming. I still think the Niners have the more dynamic offensive talent. I think that defensively, these two groups are comparable. The special teams for the Niners is a problem. And, like, look, we can't act as though you can just write off these late games that they've blown within their division, right? And there's been 3 of them, and say, okay, well, they're better than their record because of that. You do it once, okay. You do it twice, okay. You do it 3 times. That's something of a pattern. It says something at least about who you are as a football team. And also, it's just cut down their margin and the amount of time they have to make up for those sort of losses. So at the end of the day, I just think gut feeling the Niners would scare me more if I were an opposing team. I just don't think the Texans are that good, and there's still a ceiling in there with the Niners that is higher. But I think you could go either way. I also think you could go Cardinals. It's just the Cardinals defense is so bad, but their offense is so good. And you mentioned, I mean, all the NFC West teams are sort of in this same range. That's why I think that division is so interesting. Any final thoughts, Logan, before we sign off?
Yeah, maybe we just had a little seance, a little kumbaya for the Jets.
Oh, yes. Yes, I would like to say some words about Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas.
Well said.
I mean, damn.
Dude, I think the last remaining stone to fall, right? First domino, Robert Saleh.
Yep.
Okay. Second domino, Joe Douglas.
Yep. 2 towers.
Woody Johnson, let's fire yourself, right?
Woody Johnson, kill Aaron Rodgers, I think, is the next step.
Dude, Woody Johnson reportedly suggested they should bench Aaron Rodgers.
Are you kidding me?
No,
is that an actual report?
Woody Johnson suggested that the Jets
What
should
kind
bench
of an
Aaron Rodgers.
organization is this, bro? Oh, my God. I'm never picking the Jets to do anything ever again in my life. Did you get ball sacked?
No, I was wondering if I got ball. No, they said this, so it wasn't super recent. But after the Week 4 loss, he suggested that Rodgers should be benched.
That'll show him, Woody. Let's get Tyrod out there.
Yeah.
Let's get T-Mobile out there, baby. Let's get Captain Checkdown on the field.
Carson, since Woody Johnson took over in 2000, the Jets have the 6th worst winning percentage of any NFL franchise. Real quick trivia time to end of the pod. Do you know the other 5 franchises that have been worse since, other than the Jets since 2000?
Since 2000, let me get the Browns.
Number 1.
Browns have been an absolute disaster. Ooh, I'm not going to say them. No, maybe I will. Do we have the Panthers here?
Wow, the Panthers are actually number 9. No, they were good. When they
number
were
9 in terms of best win percentage? Or no, worst?
Worst.
Yeah, I was about to say for a second. I know, they have the Jake Delhomme year. They have the Cam year. But just not any really super consistently good runs.
Oh, I mean, these teams, they make sense.
The Jags?
Number 2.
Yeah, that makes sense. God, there's a lot of teams that I feel like have been inconsistent throughout.
All these teams were all really bad for a really long time. Who
was
the
Lions?
Owner?
I guess I was giving the Lions the
number
recent
3
years.
No, you're in order right now.
Yeah, with 1 miss.
Just think about like the worst organizations, like the worst ownership, pretty much.
except for, of course, the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones, because they have actually won a lot of games. I mean, obviously, the Bills would have been here 7 years ago, but not anymore, baby. All right, let me work my way through the divisions in my mind. The Raiders have to be here.
Number 4.
Yeah. Raiders, bro.
Oh, and number 5.
Haven't had a good team in 20 years, 22 years.
Number 5 is a no-brainer. Who was like consistently bad every year before this year?
Consistently bad every year before
note
this
that
year.
I mentioned ownership with all these teams. Who was like the worst owner in the NFL from like 95 to last year?
Oh, yeah, Washington.
And then next up is the Jets.
And the Jets.
Woody Johnson, man.
Yeah. By the way, what kind of a name is Woody Johnson? Do you think you know that both of his names mean Schwanz?
Right.
Does he know that both his names mean Schwanz? Because his birth name isn't Woody. It's like
naming
something
your kid
regular. It's like William or something. What is his first name?
It's like naming your kid Richard Pecker or something.
Yeah, it's like
that,
naming
man.
your kid Dick Cock or something like that.
Yeah, exactly, bro.
What's Woody Johnson's real name? Robert!
Why does he go by Woody?
That's what I'm saying. He's some sort of
Pervert?
sick bastard. He's some sort of pervert. We got to get this guy out of here. 77 years old.
Dude, there's nobody else to fire, Carson. He's going to have to fire himself.
That's why I'm telling you, we're going to get to the point where either he puts up Aaron Rodgers for a public execution or Aaron Rodgers commits the noble act of seppuku in an attempt to redeem himself in the eyes of all the Jets fans. For those who don't know, that is the samurai honor tradition of stabbing oneself through the stomach. It's suicide, in other words.
I think I'm going to bet on that. I think that's probably more likely.
Well, you can get that at plus 250 at DraftKings using promo code NERDS. All right, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this one as we did. If you want more Nerd Sesh content, there is plenty more of it. You can find all of our NBA and NFL full shows on our YouTube channel. We also have our video essays, our video breakdowns there. I did a video today on Cat, how he's playing the best offensive basketball of his life. You can go and check that out. You can also listen to all of our full shows across audio platforms. You can follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh. The preponderance of our content can be found there, Logan. You can find clips from the show, graphics from the show, all of our short-form trivia content, so check that out. You can also join our Discord. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bios. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.